Hello, and welcome to At Your End Step. My name is Morgan, and I'm here with Mike.
Hello.
And returning host, Jordan.
Hello.
Another fun-filled episode for you folks this week. Had a lot of things happen over the weekend and continue through this week about War of the Spark, and of course the Mythic Invitational that happened at PAX East in Boston. So we definitely cover all those things. But before we jump into everything, I do want to give a quick shout out to our Patreon. You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/atyourendstep. Plenty of levels to contribute at. Again, we are planning for the future to do some reinvention of our Patreon as it stands currently. Do some put some time and effort into it to rework it and get it to a higher quality standard. We, of course, want to thank all of our patrons.
But you can start backing us now, and then you'll get that quality later. Because Morgan is nothing if not a great salesman.
Yeah, clearly.
I'll buy it from me later. Not today. This product's trash.
I do want to thank our
At
patrons.
$10 level, we have magic beans.
You get them 6 months from now.
And we do need a cow up front.
But thank you to all of our patrons for contributing to the show. You folks keep the lights on for us and allow us to do the show week in and week out. So we really do appreciate it. All right. So first here at the top of the show, we do want to talk about the Mythic Invitational. It was the largest Magic tournament, as far as publicity, excuse me, and prize payout. I mean,
And viewers.
And viewers. And now... obviously, we were keeping track of it. It went up to over 100,000 people watching. I don't know if it ever hit like 150 or anything like that.
I know at least 120 was the biggest number I saw be like this point. So 120 and change.
Yeah.
Might have gotten to 130-ish. I don't know. But that's the number I know for sure that
Right.
we definitely hit.
Now, something to keep in mind is with Twitch, you do have the embedded numbers versus the actual watchers. So embedded is if they have it show up in like an ad on a particular website and people are just browsing around that website or something like that. So even with that, this is obviously something that had a lot of eyes on it. And I think that overall, production-wise, I enjoyed myself watching it.
I think to tackle on the numbers too, 120 was the high, but we were in the close to 100,000s on a Thursday and a Friday.
Yeah.
Which was again unheard of. Like we talk about like the Invitational, or even the Pro Tours in the past that have started on a Friday. You're not getting even the numbers we had, which is like what 50K is like the high for a Pro Tour.
It's like a Pro Tour final.
That's a final,
Yeah.
like 100%. So it was good. I also enjoyed it, at least from a pure production value. It was very fun to watch. I mean, I'm a paper card person until I die, and I think Jordan, you're in that same camp for sure.
I think so.
But aesthetically, watching a tournament, it was definitely easier to know what was going on. And it did, while this wasn't always perfect, and we'll talk about that, but it did free the commentators up to discuss a little bit differently than maybe they do in a full Magic tournament, which I think was interesting because you don't like some of the obvious things that you would still have to say for in a game of Magic. Like you'll get a lot of control mirrors, for example, and illustrating like the board still made sense when you saw people's hands, and that's just a huge upgrade to what we've seen. Also, and again, this is not because I know this event is probably scary for judge staff in general, but the lack of like judge calls or weird moments where like, well, we are currently in a 10-minute judge call, like we're just stalling, not having to do that for pretty much any reason is a pretty big gain.
There were times where but there were weird like program things that happened.
Program things. There were some synchronization problems. I know that they had to hold matches to like make sure there were some small things like that.
But for the most part, when things were going, they were going.
Yeah.
They weren't like stopping midstream and had to like break the flow of commentary.
You should never stop midstream.
Yeah, it's hard. It hurts sometimes too. So
You should go see a doctor during that.
I mean, it's uncomfortable. How about that? Is that a better term?
Yeah. I think if I never have to hear Marshall Sutcliffe elaborate on why he thinks a rule was broken and what a judge calls about and what the penalty should be in his mind.
Those speculations. Oh my God.
And like I remember JP, the local town judge that's left us, but he would always be like, "This was so frustrating."
He's still alive. You left it sort of ambiguous and trailed off a bit.
Yeah,
he's just in Roanoke now. It's fine.
I didn't know when to keep the joke going. I was like, "It's not funny," and then I abandoned at the wrong point.
He hasn't passed.
I haven't
Love you,
podcasted
JP.
in a while. Okay. But no, so I liked. I thought the production value was really high. I don't like that the games were so fast, and I know that's just a byproduct of Arena, and that's like the plus of Arena as a player. I like the long haul that is the Pro Tour and watching a game develop. And I might be the only person. I think if you're like a baseball or a golf fan, you probably like old school Pro Tours and watching them. But I feel like I watched 4 matches in 20 minutes, and I was like, all right, I'll wait till next round now, and that wasn't the experience that I'm used to, I guess, more than anything.
And I think they did try to mitigate that with still having it be best of 3, but I just don't think the format itself, really truly allowed for those longer games, except for when, you did have to go to game 3s and had like the Esper mirror or something like that. There were a lot of like game 3 Esper mirrors that happened, and if that's not something that is your ideal sort of matchup to have to watch continually, you may have been a little disappointed with how the format looked.
Well, let's talk about the format a little bit. The Mythic Invitational, obviously a duo standard that we talked about. I linked in our show notes. MTG Goldfish had a good write up about that. Something I want to point out. So, obviously, WotC was trying to. How do I set this up? I want to do sort of a pros and a cons after this, so I'll leave some of the
Sure.
little nits and bits out. But I want to say that I think one of the reasons for doing this, beyond just like eliminating sideboarding, which is a little more difficult for the casual viewer to grasp. If you looked at the PAX audience, especially on Sunday when they are in like where they actually had like the stage and everything, like it makes sense. You just want to attract that person walking by who happens to be at PAX, as well as that random viewer, like you said, Morgan. But I think they thought it was also going to lead to more deck diversity, and it actually did the pretty much exact opposite. So the meta broken down. So you had 2 copies of Jund Warriors, 3 copies of Selesnya Tokens, 4 copies of Red Black Spectacle, 4 copies of Golgari Midrange, 5 copies of Green Red Aggro, 6 copies of Temur Reclamation, 6 copies of Gruul Warriors, 9 copies of Esper Acuity, which is Esper Control with just a little bit different build, 17 mono reds, 27 mono whites, and 36 Esper controls.
Yeah.
And the outliers, again, they set up Jund Warriors different from Green Red Aggro, different from Gruul Warriors. These things are not that different. Green Red Aggro might have just been like the mono red deck splashing for Cindervines, but the 2 Warriors decks, like the difference was the 2 hybrid cards that we had. We had Status Statue and what's the Rakdos one?
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
That pings for 1 and discards.
Yeah.
So like again, you're talking about like so few cards off, and literally they're broken down into different archetypes, but they really aren't. So when you look here, you're talking about 8, 9 archetypes total. And when you start getting into like the cuts, then everybody had Esper Control. And it led to some real problems. Some of those being like certain players just got really, really crushed by the randomization of the deck on the beginning. I think if you look at Piotr, is it Piotr? I'm sorry, I don't want to say his name. Glukowski.
Yeah. He
got crushed by like the random die roll with the decks that he brought. He been being I guess they didn't put it on here. He did have 1 copy of Mono Blue Tempo, and that was him. And there was a Dinosaur aggro deck as well that Pterodactyls ran, which that might be Green Red aggro here. I'm not sure. But when you look at that, like that's a deck designed to be able to play for a certain meta. But when you have that randomization of decks at the beginning, like he got crushed by having to play against Mono White instead of Esper, and his round probably had very little to. It doesn't feel like a lot of these rounds had a lot to do with how do I say it, with play. The mirrors definitely did, and that's not to discount. Like good players definitely rose up, but the quality of play for this tournament was overall fairly low. And some of that also had to do with just the randomization of matches. Like, okay, Mono White runs down this deck. That's it. Oh, okay, Mono Red does this. And it just, you end up with them talking about the same cards over and over again. Like, hey, it's Teferi, or nice job, Morgan. Nice job.
Yeah.
Way to set up the volume.
Got an email, everyone, just so everyone knows.
So I think, like, Duo Standard, the games are quick, which, that makes sense what the audience are trying to net there. But I think they tried really hard to, like, let's showcase Standard. And instead they got Esper Control, which, boy, some of those games did not showcase Magic very well.
Yeah, if you're a new viewer to Magic the Gathering, and you're like, hey, watch a control mirror.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Well, and not just that, like, so, I guess to go a little bit deeper into this, of course it's a control mirror, but it's a control mirror where you can't sideboard.
Correct.
So what ended up happening is you have players who literally, like, play a land and go, and their hand is double Kaya's Wrath, double Kaya the Carnarium.
It's the worst.
And what started happening is you even had the commentators joking about, oh well, they drew another worthless card, or like the teamer decks that had Shivan Fires, right? And it was just like, oh well, haha, that card's worthless, and it's like, one, commentators need to not do that, right? Because like that's not great. But two, yeah, like these are cards you want to highlight, but they were uncastable most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
They were literally worthless. I also enjoyed the fact that they tried really hard to stop sideboarding, and then most of the Esper players brought Masterminds Acquisition with a sideboard. That actually made me very happy. I hope because a lot of the MPL players did that, and I hope that was the MPL trying to troll the format a little bit, just being like, we want sideboards always.
Yeah, well, when Marshall had to explain a sideboard, like
Anyway,
every time,
yeah,
he's like,
just
so they don't exist in this format, but like here you go. And every time they casted it because like it's so unique to that format.
And they had to do it for a bunch of decks because all the red black aggro, like anybody that
And
had
Direfully Daredevil.
Direfully Daredevil had submitted a sideboard,
Yeah.
because they could take Masterminds Acquisitions and cast it.
That's insane.
So like they still had to talk about the sideboard in multiple matches where they literally had no way to access it, but it was part of their submitted deck list, so they still talked about it.
That's the best.
So good on you for trolling WotC on that one.
Yeah,
So,
we appreciate that.
I think we talked about this when Arena first developed, that the worst thing for it to do would be to dumb down what's otherwise an excellent game.
Right.
And I think what's cool about Magic is that it's hard.
Right, I
And,
agree.
like, and I think I'm preaching to the choir for the most part. But like when you're telling the average viewer, well, look how easy Magic is, it's just best of ones, and you click your cards, and then you leave out this whole important thing that's very difficult and don't get to explain it. It's tough to get on the first take. I totally get it.
But those people who enjoyed that best of one could jump onto Arena and could just play best of one for the entire time they play Magic.
yeah, that's
So,
true.
so like it's not wrong. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Right.
But I do think there is room for those Arena players who want to play the Magic with a different experience.
Yeah.
But WotC isn't going to capture them with tabletop more than likely.
Yeah,
Paper
true.
Magic. And if you're suggesting, well, they're not trying to do that, Sunday tells a different story. Sunday says they were trying to rope these two together.
Yeah.
Like hardcore.
Yeah.
So I think that's something for them to consider as well. And I don't think you're going to be able to turn Paper Magic into best of ones. Like that doesn't really support tournament structure. It supports sitting down and playing a game for 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Which makes sense. But for the viewer, I don't disagree. Yeah. So let's start with this. And I put thoughts and coverage of commentators. Let's do some high lows. We can go back and forth. What was a high for sure?
The production value.
Okay.
I think that you cannot doubt that we looking at Arena is much cleaner than trying to decipher a board state in paper. Having access to both players' hands means that everyone has more information that is watching, which allows the commentators to construct hopefully better scenarios and kind of do their own analysis of the games and things that are going to be happening in the future a little bit better. And it allows for more exciting moments because if you're watching a Star City Games tournament and they're playing paper, and you'll have some of the commentators that they'll say, well, they could draw this card right now, and this could change, shift the board state, change the flow of the game. And the person draws it, but they don't have access to that potentially. Right. But this time you always knew what they were drawing, and you could have those exciting moments where the commentators could leverage that exciting sort of tension and amp up the hype, as it were. So I really think overall, like the quality of the production that they put on was entertaining, and I can understand why people wanted to watch it.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I think there's two major advances there that are so clean for a viewing player. One is the stack. A visualization of the stack. I think for a newer player, that's so important. I've been teaching some newer players and getting them to understand in response to this, what does counter spell mean?
Yeah.
How I played this, it happened, not yet. Right, and again, the stack is what makes Magic beautiful to me, because every other game where you only play on your turn and you pass back, because it's it's like Hearthstone. It's like, okay,
all right, your turn now.
I want to interact with you, please.
Yeah.
But the stack is super hard to illustrate, and if I just jump into a match, if I turn on a stream, Arena shows me the stack. If somebody's making a decision, I can be like, oh, okay, they're thinking about this. The second is the ability to see not only the hands, but top of the library. If somebody scryed, you could see the top of the library. Mm-hmm. If somebody had Experimental Frenzy, you could see the top of the library. And I think that's such a huge thing that it feels so minor. But again, that the viewer, have all of this information, so I can discern this.
Yeah, I think it was similar for me with production value. Finally took the world's best game and made it to the best product. and I'm really excited to see like the Hearthstone, because that's a worse game. And Eternal, for as much as I like it, it's a worse game, but the production value for those tournaments is a lot higher, so I'm excited by that. The future potential is really great too. For every time you have 2 people on a computer, you could stream that game on a side stream, and that's super neat. They used to do that with StarCraft a lot, where so LSV and Finkel are on stream 1, but Josh McClain and Mike are on stream 2, and I can go watch that, like, so the future potential is really neat. But overall, I'm excited that they finally took the best game and made it into the best product.
All right, how about a low?
I think that there's still some room to grow with Wizards' commentary team. I feel like Star City Games is always consistently better, has better teams, has better chemistry, and
better commentators in the event.
Yes, and I really feel like there's still room to grow there. There's still they still just need to finalize like what that is, what their commentary teams are always going to be, and let those people like grow together and be natural. We have. I just don't think we have like consistent faces that are in every tournament. You know what I mean? So if you're gonna have a commentary team at this, then that should be the same commentary team that we see somewhere else. And I really feel that in the want to have such a polished product, they may have not just allowed the commentary team to really kind of gel together. It just felt like there was a lot of missteps. It didn't feel it just doesn't feel as good as Star City Games tournament coverage.
Yeah, we talked about this a lot in chat, and I want to be delicate with this because like the I think the easiest criticism and the lowest criticism would be to go for like, well, the 2 really new commentators like struggled a little bit, and I think that they did, but I know that like I don't want to just be like, okay, well they were also the 2 women, so I'm not going to just like criticize for the sake. I want to talk about some specifics with the whole team and look at that. When you bring new people in who are big in the community, like a Day9, also, had a number of weird, awkward moments. Like I was very happy to see Kibler. And Kibler had pretty good repartee, but the commentary teams can't listen to each other for some reason. You could watch them try to talk over each other. Kibler's real bad about it. You can see him multiple times, and it happened a bunch on Sunday, where he got either frustrated with the other person talking or wanted to go to the next thought, and you could see him doing like the lip motion, and you're like, whoa, everybody calm down for a second. And I think that you had people who didn't know certainly what all the cards did, and I think you had multiple times where Cheon was sort of like kind of like snapping very quickly when like someone else made a point, and he'd be like, well, no, that's actually not true, but then wasn't listening in the inverse. The game that I'm trying to remember who it was who won with the shock off the top for Mono Red, like the co-commentator, she had seen it. Like she's like, oh, there's a shock on top. There's a shock on top. She said it like 3 times, and Cheon's like, oh, is there a burn spell on top? Oh my, he drew a shock, and she's just like, yeah, like I said that, but like I think he'd already decided that she wasn't like, like she had been, and I'm like, and that's you're talking about, it's bad chemistry.
Yeah, and like the way that the commentary teams for Star City are set up, all of their teams have good chemistry, even if you don't necessarily like those personalities. Personally, they all play off each other well. They all listen to each other well, and I think that is you really hit the nail on the head with them not listening to each other and being able to have that active sort of where it feels like they're a team,
right.
And it just felt like individuals up there a lot of the time.
I also think that like their floor things left a lot to be desired. Having
so awkward.
Having Day9 come out and be your person to introduce things is cool, like setting it up like a wrestling match. But then the energy immediately died. Like literally, it was like, and introducing this player, and then the like fireworks came off, and then they came out, and he was like, okay, to your stations, and you're like,
what's the girl's name that did really, really well, made top 16, Amazonia?
Yeah, Amazonia, yeah.
She was fantastic.
MTG Nerd Girl was the other one. Like, it was a bunch
I'm thinking of Amazonia.
It was Amazonia, yeah.
Because he did the thing, and then she, like, ran down the ramp, but we're all nerds, man. Like, let's not make this what it's not. It was so weird to see her running down the thing with her fist pumping, and for every guy that did it, too, it was just, like, this weird, like, this isn't what we are, you know?
But I don't think that's necessarily true, though, because if you take a look at like, your other esports teams...
Yeah.
It's weird to me me when they do it too.
But
like when Counter
fair
Strike guys
enough.
are like high fiving and
Fair
chest
enough.
bumping, like shut up, you clicked a mouse button.
Fair enough, I guess. But
You didn't shoot that guy in the head. You clicked a mouse.
Do you want
button.
them to come out like David Duchovny and Zoolander with like glass cases over their hands, like release them?
but realistically speaking, with the type of environment and setting they're trying to create, that is the kind of personality that they want. I feel like that's what they're trying to harbor, or that's what they're trying to grow with the type of extravagance they're setting up.
Do you ever watch the League? League of Legends is like the weekly pro league that they do.
No, I have never.
You should watch it and then ask yourself if that's really what you want, because they have the teams come down and high five the crowd, and it's the weirdest thing for everybody.
It's like a high school basketball
But
game.
It's so uncomfortable. I mean, they're packed.
Here,
right?
starting
And the
center,
energy's
a
high.
junior.
Yeah.
But I mean,
he's
like-
the jungler. You know, like
But it's weird. It's I don't know. I don't know if it's weird to you, but it may be weird
it's
to
definitely
you.
weird to me. Oh, yeah, okay.
It's probably weird to you, but again, I think that is the kind of environment they're trying to create.
And I think I would be more okay with that if it was consistent. And I think
Correct.
I think that's true for the floor interviews as well, where you had a person who didn't really know the game doing the floor interviews.
Sean, you mean Day 9?
No, the floor interviews, and I was trying to pull up her name because I don't know
the
her very
new,
well.
the new,
Yeah, and I had the name set up, and I lost the stupid link for it. I got to tell you, the coverage page for the Mythic Invitational leaves a lot to be desired. But so she was trying to do her best with some of those things, but you could also tell that like the players were not really prepared for these things, and some of them probably you shouldn't be asking questions to.
Right.
It was like okay, this is just not a person we should interview again, because she would like literally be like, hey, how'd you feel here? And they're like, good, and she's like, okay, a man of a lot of words. And it was just like, come on, like you have to. We want to say it's easy just to like get people to talk, and you're like, well, they're streamers, they talk a lot. They talk in their home when there's no one around them,
Right,
And I
right.
think like she, again, there were some moments where like she didn't listen to them and wasn't going on, but there was a bunch of times where she was like trying really hard, like I have this energy, and they were just like, nope, and you're like,
Yeah.
You got to coach them. You've got to coach them to play with her, because this doesn't work. It isn't worth our time. If you're if you're trying to build charismatic like people and characters, you have to coach them.
This is
because
the best tournament for that. It's
100%.
64 people.
Yeah,
it's
that's
the
it.
easiest one to do.
And I think I'm going to tackle on that too, because I wanted to mention Glukowski specifically. He had a heck of a run, but I thought it was super weird that they were celebrating his childish. I'm going to be honest, very childish.
I missed this.
He,
heard you talking
so
about
he
this.
was a guy who was like spamming emotes to people during like the Mythic Invitational,
Oh.
and like he has a hat that he wears called the Happy Hat. Like they're on screen, it's like a beanie that somebody sent him, and he was like putting that on, and like I want people to be excited. Like I enjoyed seeing like people who won like fist bumping and like those kind of things.
Right.
But he was just like a lot of his stuff, like him being like clicking on nice a bunch when people made a good move, which is like a salt thing for.
Right.
It was just a really weird celebration
Yeah.
of like bad internet.
It's
like I would want to say like
bad manners. It's
Yeah,
BM.
thank you. Yeah.
That's what it is.
is that what BM stands for?
Not always,
I didn't
but
think so.
sometimes.
Well, that's what I.
Is that bowel movement?
Yeah, that's also what
Oh.
it stands for.
I got you to say it on the podcast.
You didn't.
It's
know.
not.
No,
it's not
it
like it's not a thing. Like, it's
Everyone does it. It's all right. But yeah, I agree. Like that is. It's a weird line to be like, we want you to express your personality. We want you to be a personality. That's what people like. That's people like.
Sure.
People like sports personalities. People like esports personalities the same way, and we want you to be that. But also, I agree that it's a little bit awkward for the commentators to be like, ha ha ha, look at this. He's really getting them with this or that, and it's just like,
and maybe they couldn't be any other way on stream.
maybe not.
But
It's a tough.
it's
a tough place.
It was weird to see it. So yeah, I agree. Like, and again, if they use the entire same team again, great. That's what I honestly, it's what I hope they do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Again,
But I
let
do-
these people figure out how this all works
how
together.
this works together. But I do think that like when you have some pretty good people who you've benched already, I think of like we didn't see like Hagon was there doing production stuff, but like Hagon or like Maria who like have been doing this for a little bit, and it seems weird to like swap them
Yeah.
out. Like I get using Day 9, I get using like these people who are streamers and like other things. Like I get that, but
D9's my favorite esport personality.
and he's got a good voice
Yeah.
for it, and like it was good to see Kibler, and I just. I don't know. Let them all work together. I please like continue like like Magic has made really good strides with like incorporation and like making sure there are people like who are skilled on all these different things and putting together diverse groups and these things. But you've got to let it coalesce, and they keep changing it a lot, and that's frustrating.
Yeah, I agree.
So.
It's all about, again, getting that team together, keeping them together, and forming that
And
relationship.
for him just being better. And again, I will say it's all of you, but I will say very specifically the guys on the coverage team. You gotta listen. You're like, it is cringy for me to watch and just be like again, like I was like typing in chat. I'm like, she said shock. She said you have to listen. Like
you just gotta...
because like it if you're listening at home, like and again, Chian was in the moment, he was excited, but like if you're sitting there, you're just like.
It's like you're watching mansplaining and it's terrible. You like see yourself every once in a while.
Yeah, no,
like, oh, I look like this. Oh God. Yeah.
Another high. Give me another high.
I think that I think that in this tournament you could definitely they did a good job at making you feel the drama.
Yes,
and I feel like we've had. You don't necessarily feel that at every GP. You sometimes feel it at the Pro Tour, but that can even be hit or miss. And a lot of that has to do with like proximity. It really feels like if you're in the room when the Pro Tour is happening, you can definitely feel it. But if you're watching it, you just have those layers of of being apart from it. But I really felt tied into the Invitational. I really felt like there was high stakes, and I could feel it's just. You have all the information, so there's no mystery. So like and like you know that you are going to get the information the same time the players do, which allows you to more keenly be in their sort of emotional space as they are. You're not like having these delayed responses where it's like, did they, don't they, do they have it, do they not have it, what they draw? Like you have all the cards on the table, quite literally, and I think that helps you feel more tied into what is actually going on. But I really felt that the emotions that they were trying to make you feel were there, and were able to be there successfully due to Magic Arena, really.
Yeah.
I almost disagree, which is interesting because my low is that no game felt like an event to me, and I don't know if that's.
I so disagree.
Really, yeah. I don't know. I watched.
There is some wild games.
There are two matches, like two Game 3 games that are like burned to my memory as some of my favorite games I've ever watched
from this weekend.
Really? So it was at Savage versus was that Glukowski, the mono red?
Yeah.
It was Game 3. Savage was on Esper control, and the last few turns of that game, right, where he was trying to dig for the answers. The turn where he's at 4, right, and there's a Fanatical Firebrand in play, and the guy, and Glukowski draws the Lightning Strike, and Savage he has a Syncopate. He also wants to activate Search for Canta, but if he doesn't leave Syncopate man up, he just dies to a burn spell. And Glukowski does an attack with the Firebrand just to make sure he has the damage up. And you can see Savage like literally agonizing over this and chooses not to do it.
Yeah.
And then got rewarded there, and then gets another turn and has a choice between the Absorb and the Kaya, which I mean, Corbin Hosler posted a whole poll about it. It was a huge thing because he chose the Kaya, which I mean I think was correct, but was super debatable there because of where he needed to be in the game, and he lost to a top deck burn spell. And these turns were, I mean, this is critical. This is literally their tournament lives on the line, and it was just there. And then the match, I think it was Friday, but it was Pterodactyls versus. I can't remember who was versus, but she had brought the Red Green Dinosaurs deck, which was sweet.
Right.
And she had a bit of a slow draw, but she ended up with 3 Rhythm of the Wild, and had to play out her threats very specifically against Esper control, and she missed on lethal once when she drew Growth Chamber Guardian, and she got the third one, didn't play the third one, and he had been chaining enough spells like Moment of Cravings and stuff to keep alive, and then it came down to him being able to ultimate Teferi. He's at 10, I think, right, and he has this Chemister's Insight, and is like, okay, well, do I do it now? And what do I do? Do I wait and see if she gets a creature so I can exile it, right? Mm-hmm. So if she'd done it and hit lands, she can cast less threats, and she top decks Carnage Tyrant, and casts it, and so he's able to exile the Rhythm of the Wild, so it doesn't get haste, but he's just dead to it, and is able to dig and find the Kaya's Wrath, and like those turns back and forth where it's literally she's just drawing haymakers off the top, and like they're uncounterable, they have haste, and he is digging through every possible thing he can find. Like those games are awesome to watch.
Sure, I guess I think I watched good games. Maybe I'm making a distinguishing between like good games and then things that feel like an event. Like maybe I'm crazy to try to do that. I guess
he's getting eliminated felt I felt like such a big moment.
What was the match where who won through a Teferi Emblem?
Was that was
Gabriel Nassif, right?
No, that was Matt Nass who beat
Matt
Seth
Nass.
Manfield.
Beat
Yeah,
Seth
that was
Manfield.
unreal as well.
Yeah, that was a great match. I think it's one of my top 10 matches now, like of all time. But like, I guess like I don't know. It didn't really.
Do you feel that do you feel that any like arena match could feel like that for you? Do you feel like you're biased towards paper?
I don't know. So now that I'm starting to think about it, I'm trying to think of like matches in my life where I felt like they were an event, either as a spectator or as a player or as a team member. And I don't know. I think so. I think it definitely could.
Mm-hmm.
I think the nature of it being a 64-person invitational where some of it was from a meritocracy and some of it was just because of popularity invites and like a bunch of other stuff. Like it kind of lost a little bit with me because it wasn't for me. I don't think that type of tournament's like designed for like the hardcore viewer in mind. Even though
No, it is definitely an exhibition. It was an exhibition of arena.
It was like
for
a
sure.
pro-am on a new software, and so I think like when I think I asked in our chat like, does this make whoever wins this the same as a Pro Tour champion? And almost universally people were like, oh no, this isn't that. And I think it lost it for that for me. I don't care about GP results either.
From that perspective, I can see where you're coming from, and that's
Yeah.
actually if I want to piggyback there, that's my low was duo standard and match quality at times, not all the times. Some of them
Right.
were very very good, but I do think like we've as a podcast, and I say a podcast like it's Morgan and I generally, but we have a Discord and we talk about a bunch of things. Have sort of debated back and forth like if you are like an arena like only or arena mostly player, does it change how you play in certain matchups? And I think you saw some interesting things the way that arena and especially best of one standard pushes people. So you saw the MPL wholeheartedly take Esper, right? And you saw a lot of the challengers play dual aggro decks, a lot of aggressive decks because again aggressive strategies are good on arena, they really are, and they're good in best of one in general. But you saw some pretty tough matches where, there was the person who played the first, and I can't remember every one of these names. Some of them were people's names. Some of them were.
Yeah.
That was a low for
that's
me.
a low. That's a
Professionalize it and go by your name.
Yeah,
Like,
we
that's
already
kinda
anticipated that being bad, and
It was
it was
bad.
as
It was
bad.
real bad.
It was like the worst. It was the worst
Can we agree it should
timeline.
be everybody's real name.
Yes,
Yes.
100%.
Again,
every
you
time.
can say like
Hey.
when you talk to them, this is this person who is this
Who
tag.
plays
Hey,
this on
guess what?
Twitch?
There's this
Yeah.
nifty thing that we have developed in language. It's called the quotation mark in the middle of the two names, the first name and last name. Like if you have someone has
Gabriel
a nickname,
Yellow
like
had the
hey,
seat.
how
I
you're,
like that.
yeah, you're like Michael, Mike,
Sean,
X.
Sean
like
Plot
come on.
goes by Sean Day 9 Plot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like come on, we've already figured out the technology, people.
Yeah.
Just implement it.
But so like they weren't like spectacling cards. Like it was very odd. Like watching them play against Newmont, and I was like, I don't think this person knows how to stack these things. Like casting one spell per turn when they could have cast like two to try and like get ahead with like light up the stage. And it was awkward to see because it's like, okay, but they could chain like their creatures attacking, and the mono red deck like probably still wins a pretty high amount of the time, even if you're not always playing that optimally. We also saw some players who playing against control decks, as good as that match with Pterodactyls was, like, she definitely missed like playing another creature out there with haste there that would have been like lethal. And we saw some other players too who, didn't play like, hey, my opponent is at a low life total. Here's counter magic. I should wait till their upkeep. I should wait till they use their mana. I should wait till they do something. Like they're gonna Chemist's Insight. They're gonna activate Ascanta. They can't not do these things because they won't win.
Right.
And lose games that felt unlosable by not understanding these interactions. And when you don't watch like paper Magic consistently, we don't watch the Mythic Invitational, you don't play competitively outside of just you on your computer with Arena, I don't think you have the consistent basis to learn these kinds of matches.
Right.
You just they're 20-minute games, they're 10-minute games, they're 5-minute games. You burn through them quickly and you move on. It doesn't mean they're not like good players, but I think when WotC kept suggesting like, well, the challengers are really working against the MPL here. It's like, yeah, you randomize decks the first choice, and then like, your play draw stuff was weird too, and like I
took a game that already has plus variance and added more.
yeah, and like pretending like that was better, and like so you had players like losing matches that were just like, again, matches that are very bad game one matches that could have been mitigated by sideboards, but you're not allowed to sideboard, and then players who were navigating unfamiliar board states that you could tell they weren't prepared to do, and you wouldn't see that normally at a Pro Tour or Mythic Championship, and that really did cement. And I think going back to your I think some of the matches were dramatic, but now that I think about some of the things that I did complain about while in our chat while watching, I get where you're coming from. Because
it's not that the games weren't good.
No.
Yeah, so there's definitely some games that are in my top 10.
It was frustrating to see some and it was like, I will say this, it felt like anguish for some people where it was like, because I've been there, I've been like, oh, you this was, and of course we have all the information. Like I get to see everything, but like the play pattern is just like, it's not something I think you would easily learn in Arena, especially if you play best of one.
I think there's also you do have to question time. Like, how long have these people been playing Magic?
We have one guy said he'd never been to day 2 of any tournament.
Sure.
And like, so yeah, that's really like he did really well in Arena and got there, and he's gonna make some mistakes because the modem's different than playing high end competitive Magic.
Did you see they kept? And I know you only watched like mostly Sunday, but they kept showing how many games of Arena.
5,000 or something like that.
The people who are in the thousands, like just to go back to a point that we've made on this podcast before, if you want to understand how unhealthy trying to queue for the top 8 slots were, look at the thousands of games of Arena the people that qualified via the top 8 have played.
Amazonian was in the 5,000.
Yes, like
I played 15 yesterday, and I'm done with Magic for a month. Like I haven't touched this game in like 2 years, and I'm like, that was enough for 2 years again.
So, so I just think like that as a sidebar, like that is please.
Who won? What's his name? It's
Andrea Mangucci.
So Andrea Mangucci.
Gucci Gang.
Okay, so he played against a guy that they interviewed in like the top 4, I think, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think playing the pros is that much different than playing players, like average players. Like they're not that much better than us." He got absolutely rolled, and I loved every bit of it. And Abby like doesn't care about like Magic, right? She was just like, "Oh, I hope that guy loses because like he shouldn't win." Right?
That was Glukowski, and again, like I don't want to pile on that guy because like one, he's obviously got a large following, and some people like that stuff. I mean, you guys have enjoyed watching like Michael Jacobs stream, and I think I think I think like listening to him is horrible.
Yeah, and he's good though too. So like you could say, I think I'm better than this guy if you're better than this guy.
Glukowski was in the finals of this event, and also like was the only player to bring mono blue, a deck that in this duo standard format really had a chance to, as we saw in the finals, really had a chance to get a little unlucky. You know what I mean? So I think that
I think even if you're that type of personality though, like and maybe I'm just being hypocritical with me liking MJ.
Yes, you are.
But like MJ's also been a staple of the community since it started. This guy,
you don't be careful with that because
there's a respect your roots thing in every competitive
he
sport.
has a community. It's just not the United States, man. So it just you got to be careful here.
That's fair.
Like you're like he doesn't.
I didn't know he had a huge following overseas.
I mean, he made it here. He was a streamer, correct? Like he was a challenger. He wasn't one of the top 8 people, right?
I have no idea.
I think he was a streamer. I think he was a challenger.
Okay.
So.
That's fair. So I guess if he's been playing the game for a long time and whatever.
Again, like
he also referred to them as like the pros. So like I don't think people that are.
But so did Magic. That's what the whole they kept. It worries me a little bit because they kept playing up the MPL versus everyone else. Like, well, the MPL's not doing very well, and it's like, are you going to use this as a basis for something? Like, well, we're going to half the size of the MPL because you guys suck. So
I think they were doing that as like a look, anybody can do it.
I'm sure, but if I'm an MPL member, I'm like, okay, maybe tone down the rhetoric a little bit here.
Well, my job's
like
hard.
you did give us a $70,000 contract, so this is a weird way to communicate with us.
Yeah. I guess like I wouldn't, as a guy that's played Magic really competitively and like would randomly decide to do it again, I wouldn't refer to them as the pros.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a thing that like competitive Magic players do. I wouldn't let Brad Nelson cube with us one time, you know? Like I don't respect these people. Like, so I don't know, and maybe I'm wrong and just hypocritical because like I do. MJ stream is great.
Sure, but I think that's part of it. Like his
shtick is.
Here's the thing: Magic probably does need that a little bit, but again, then going back to our previous point, you've got to coach those people to at least because that at least was a lively interview, but his floor interviews were cold. They were just cold, and it was rough. So yeah, there's that. I want to say one little quick thing about Mangucci. If you were following stuff on Twitter, so like he had been planning so apparently. According to him, he sleeps 10 hours a day and he plays Magic 10 hours a day. Like that's what he does. And he complains if he doesn't get his 10 hours of sleep, which is hilarious to me. But he was like dreaming and then planning what he was going to do. Like this is like Friday, Saturday. Like I'm going to buy a Beta Power 9. I'm going to do this, right? And then he wins the whole thing so he can go do it. But then I think it was Gavin Nassif who tweeted out. He's like, "Hey, just so you know, because he streams for a living. That's what he
Right.
streams and he does videos for Channel Fireball, the legacy videos, right?
He's in PL, right?
Yeah, he's MPL.
He
So
gets $70,000 a year from that.
so
yeah.
he's apparently needs a new computer fairly badly, and he was told that if you win this tournament, you get one of those Omen PCs.
That got thrown in as top of the first
and
prize.
then when he got told that, he was like, "Oh, I'll wait then." How unreal is that?
It's very good.
Oh man,
It's
like
very,
just like
very
talk
good.
about a call because like either way you're getting a new computer, but if you happen to win it, you have one of the best stories just for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So
I also think does that feel different than what I'm talking about? I think that's like lighthearted and funny.
yeah, that's I agree with that.
But anyway,
But
yeah.
and he wasn't saying that on stage. So
Right. I
um,
wouldn't want to hang my hat on hating a guy for how he acts in an interview that he's not clearly trained to do. But like,
Well, no, but again, what I'm saying is that Watsy should coach them a little bit.
I definitely
you know
agree.
what I mean? Like,
especially in a small environment.
or don't get them right after a game. You know what I mean? Like, I think like some of that is just even if you just won a match and you're excited, like they want to get that in the moment feel of excitement. But some people don't process Magic that way. Lukowski was obviously one of them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because they're even keeled, and that's one of the keys to being a pretty good player.
Right.
And two, like some people just can't process like that. Like I was just so focused on this game, and now here's a microphone. Hey, how'd you do with this? And it's like, whoa, take a breath.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know,
Like, jeez, man, I'm
like
looking to go get
I
a
know you're
soda.
doing your job, but like I got a bathroom.
I haven't
Like,
eaten in 8 hours. Have you played in one of these?
is there a Checkers around here? Like I don't.
If you're not going to do a Shake Shack in Boston, no, you got it
I was
wrong.
just trying to go with something like really weird.
Okay, that's
all right, let's end on a high, and I'm going to throw out. If you have other ones to throw out, you too, that's fine. But the high I want to throw out here is I want to say this was really good for Arena. Like
It made me spend $100 on the product. Like I didn't have any interest in it. And then we were talking about it all weekend, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy an Esper deck, and I did, and it was great.
Arena, I mean, and that's awesome. I'm glad.
Yeah.
You have been kind of silent on the Magic channel for a while, so
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
say that if we're looking for the people the Magic's trying to bring back in, like they rope it up you, bud.
Yeah,
I don't know what
they
to tell
sure
you. I
got
got
me.
you good.
Yeah, like I'm buying a house now. People was like, don't spend money, and I was like, oh, it's too late, bye. Like,
But like I've been pretty critical at times of Arena on here, and I still think it definitely has things it needs to fix. But it's in beta, and the fact that they took a beta product and did an event like this, and it worked as well as it did, and I'll be honest, Thursday and Friday, when I was able to be home, I sat at home, and my left computer screen was the Invitational, and my right computer screen was me playing Arena.
oh, we do it backwards. I have what I'm doing on the left, and then my viewing on the
Interesting.
right. Yeah,
I try to think of how I sit. Nah, I can't do it.
interesting.
Yeah, huh.
Weird. Uh-huh.
So, but like I think like that's probably what they wanted the most.
do you have to
know
turn
what I
your
mean?
head to do your game?
I look at the game. I tend to only listen to the thing.
Well, same here. But do you like have to turn your head to look at the game you're playing? So we're off the rails. But
Do you use right hand for mouse?
I'm a
or-
right-handed mouse.
Really?
Left-handed keyboard. Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So
Huh.
like I sit straight forward, and with the way, and I'm in the middle of my desk, and my
Yeah,
monitor is in the middle.
I'm my two monitors are
yeah.
like split right. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I've been at your desk. You know,
Huh.
weird.
All right.
It's strange.
This is a good audio.
You just tweeted us and let me know how you sit at your desk.
yeah, like we need to know who's right. We're really competitive.
Exactly.
But I think like for Arena, this is really positive. They obviously we talked last week about how they unrolled these new full arts and the altars and these things like that. They gave away a bunch of free codes. I was excited to hear each one
was
of those. The games again were fun to watch.
That's actually what got me into it was the codes. I was
Yeah?
like, I'm not ever going to play
Free
this,
stuff.
but I might as well
Free stuff.
I might as well get the code. So I had to download the program, and I was like, well, let's see what decks I have, and was like, and that's how I did it.
So I think like as a showcase for Arena and what Arena can do,
Yeah,
it was really positive.
yeah, it was a good event. I want to watch the next one. I still want paper events to be important, but I am excited for the next Arena event as well.
Fair enough.
Peter Glogowski is an MPL player.
Is he an MPL player?
He is.
I am insane. I thought he was a streamer.
Nope.
Yeah. Here's the thing.
I'm a dick.
Wow. Hey, but this is.
Oh, right.
You did a cuss.
We did-
That's one.
That's
we
one.
did
We're
this
PG-13.
Yeah,
That's
we're
one.
PG-13. So sorry, kiddies.
Did we get one F word?
It's Richard.
No F words.
But here's the thing. Here's what I will say with that. And like we've looked at the list of MPL multiple times. So he's obviously then streams a lot, so he does have his own following. But I wouldn't say I will say this, WotC, especially with the way the Mythic Invitational was done, made it a little bit confusing at times as to who's going. Again, where you're using names sometimes and not this and this and that. So I'm not going to feel bad that I didn't know he was MPL. But at the same time, like that's the reason why the MPL has players from all around the world, because I'm probably not set up to have a vested interest in Glukowski. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because there's the names I know are here, but the players, in these other places should have that player. So
I've been out obviously since they've announced the pro league. Is that going to be an actual league, like that I can watch regularly?
Yeah, they are doing some actual streaming and setup with that coming, I think, in this month.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's going to be like the Vintage Super League. Because I loved the format for that kind of thing.
Yes, that is going to be the design of it.
And that's
perfect.
going to be cool.
I've watched, besides this, when the last season before they stopped, every single Vintage Super League match. So I love it. Like even when I wasn't playing, so I'm super excited for this league format.
Yeah, the league stuffs those are going to be cool.
Cool.
Did you think it was good for Arena?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
I think if people wanted, if you were watching this and didn't know really what Magic was, and you saw Arena and knew that you'd go and download it for free and start playing,
and get a bunch of free stuff while you did it.
Yep. You were sold. Like
Yeah.
if you wanted to get hooked on something, and then you were probably disappointed that you couldn't put it on your tablet. And I think
I wanted to play it once
Or,
today.
I will say this, or your Mac, because a lot of
Yep.
people would not stop tweeting about that over the weekend, and I don't blame them.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. That's
So
weird.
I hope that this encourages people to go and download it and play it and learn Magic, and explore what you can do. Play best of 1, play best of 3, and make sure that Wizards knows that you want it on other platforms. Please start this.
sometimes you explore and then explore again. It could just depend.
You know, only if you're a J-Lit Ranger, though.
you have a 3-5 and
We should mention quickly one more thing since we started talking about the MPL. There was, because we hinted at it a little bit last week, there was an article released on Kotaku about Owen Turtenwald.
Correct, and there's some serious allegations levied against him, socially speaking. It's not legally speaking.
Like some
but-
harassment.
Correct.
And there are screenshots apparently being sent to Wizards, and I think that, I will say what I've seen on Twitter is I've seen a lot of people who have made some blanket comments like if you didn't know this, you weren't paying attention or whatever else. Like, I mean, I've been around that person. I'm not friends by any means with any of those people, but like being around those people, like I knew that he had a reputation for being a jerk. But I don't try to get into Magic drama like that stuff specifically. I don't go around to GPs being like, "What's the dish?" You know what I mean? But I do think like I wouldn't be angry with like fans of Owens and like who are surprised at this because like. I mean, if you're just a fan of a guy who streams, whatever. I mean, the same thing was true for like Todd Stevens. Now, if this continues forward and he's like pushed out of the MPL and like you're one of those people who's like, nah, he could never have done that, then like maybe then you
Right.
got to check yourself.
it's
But-
like okay to be a fan of something and be surprised. I think
yeah,
we
like
all
and,
are with our
and
celebrities.
and you have to be upset, and that's
Yeah.
So I think it will be interesting to see if and when WotC does take action because again, I think if they removed him from the Mythic Invitational for this, which technically hasn't been confirmed. Right, like these things are written up like have been alleged, but like WotC really has been tight-lipped about it.
Yeah.
But like you remove him from the Mythic Invitational, you probably have to remove him from the MPL as well.
The MPL thing is like a contract item though, so I could definitely
Right.
see him having some recourse there and like an appeal process.
The idea of them not having like
A morality clause,
or something like that
yeah, I don't know.
is like
I think a lot
there's
of
no
people
way.
wanted to see those contracts before for some of those things, and I think it'd be interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah.
So
They would if Wizards didn't have something like that to prevent them from getting burned by stuff like this, then they would be fools in my opinion.
I definitely agree with you. I wonder what those look like because like the NFL struggles a lot with like its policy on that.
Sure.
I have to imagine that if something as big as the NFL struggles with its policy, like WotC has to struggle
well,
with it.
they have a union.
Yeah.
They have a players' union.
That's definitely fair.
So
That's
I
definitely
think
fair.
that's a major difference.
That's
but,
a good point. Yeah.
I'm not to say that there couldn't be action taken, but having a union
Right.
makes it a little bit
Right.
easier.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I just think like now I will say this that back to my original point of like if you didn't know this you weren't paying attention like that to the professional community and those closest to him probably hits a little bit closer to home,
Yeah.
and that's something I think people are going to have to answer some questions about whether they really like it or not, and we'll probably face some backlash about.
If you knew and didn't say something, you're a garbage human too.
There's a very close friendship there with some other people who are very respected and both played in the Mythic Invitational and Reed Duke and Hugh Jensen, and I think that like again, it's very possible to be very close friends with someone and like
And still not know
and hide
everything.
your garbage, but
it's hard.
in this kind of scenario where like these are like probably Magic players too who are in this situation. it's harder to see it that way. So again, I don't want to make any sort of weird. I don't want to ledge anything because I don't know anything. But I do want to see how WotC moves forward and how people around him move forward. So
It'll be certainly interesting. It's the one piece of Magic news that I've kind of been following a little bit since it broke, and
I think you can't help it. I mean,
it's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of like prominence there that just makes it newsworthy.
Yep.
So.
Right, and I mean, we're going to see if what offenses that people can go to jail for keep them out of the Hall of Fame, if there is one. There's not one right now. You know,
So like a random Chapin joke.
it was.
Okay, I was just making sure. I just want to make sure.
Timed. You keep acting like this when I drink another one of Morgan's Cokes. Okay.
But yeah, if there is anything that comes out of that story, we'll definitely let you know about it. I mean, there is some precedent, obviously, with things that happened with Todd Stevens, and this is like that on a much larger scale.
Yeah.
And at the very and Todd Stevens is banned from Star City Games tournaments for 3 years. So
Does he have a WotC ban too? Like a
No.
DC
It's not. We looked into that because we wanted to know
He's-
maybe what recourse additionally WotC might take. So I don't know if he would or not.
no, he does not have a ban from WotC, but
It's very
he is
interesting.
banned from Star City Games tournaments for
Yeah.
3 years.
So he could go GP grind if he wanted.
I mean, go to his local
Yes,
store.
correct.
So
Whatever.
Yeah.
so that's a little bit interesting.
WotC's like reading the Roger Goodell playbook.
Wow.
I mean, you're not wrong. So
Yeah.
again, I don't want to end our conversation with Mythic Invitational that way. That was just a big deal.
No,
but
no,
there were a lot of
is
good
the
things.
controversy that came out
Yeah,
about
for
it.
sure. There were a lot of good things. It was a really positive event. Like I think for Magic, and as a person who's all of us here who have been so invested in Magic for different reasons at different times, like I celebrated this weekend. It was a good time. Like there's things to fix. For sure, and I hope that like the criticism of like Duo Standard was loud.
Yeah.
and I hope they
Bad
hear
format.
that. I hope they remember how important like the things that make Magic so good. Jordan mentioned like the length of games and the depth of games. Well, sideboarded games like really are a major part of that. And like, can you adjust? I mean, I think like if we're going to continue comparing it to sports, like if adjustments weren't important, you wouldn't have halftime.
Right.
You know what I mean? You just wouldn't. You would just play one quarter, one period, whatever, and then be done. But because you want to have a chance to adjust and you want to see competition at the highest levels, you give them time to adjust those things. And I think Magic is no different. And card design suffer. The cards that you see play suffer. We saw it in Duo Standard. The cards that saw play suffered as far as their diversity and the range of what you saw because you didn't have sideboards.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree. All right. Before we jump into War of the Spark, I do want to give a quick shout out to Comic Town, our lovely sponsor. They're going to be hosting a Standard IQ on April 20th. And you could definitely check out more information about that tournament on worldcomic.com or Comic Town Gaming Center on Facebook. Again, that's a Standard IQ on April 20th.
What for my date in my calendar? Can you help me find that?
It would be the number 4 followed by 20.
Nice.
2019 as the year, of course.
For 2020, double the fun.
But thank you again, Comic Town. So, War of the Sparks. We got a bunch of new stuff. So much new stuff. We got a new trailer that is pretty dramatic.
Yeah, it is.
yeah,
Definitely.
It's got like 16 wheels.
It
You have
is-
to use like an F-350 to tow it. The War of the Spark trailer. No. I tried pretty hard.
Nicol
I hate
Bolas
the
is not a
joke.
laughing matter, Mike.
It definitely it is a full it's a full motion animation. It is
It was
like
awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's not just like when they make the card art move or anything like that. No, this is a full blown like digital animation trailer, which is pretty good quality. I would say comparable. I mean, like comparable to like a good video game trailer, which makes sense for Arena. To be
Sure.
perfectly
I
honest,
thought it was like an animated short. It was kind of the way
Yeah,
I thought
yeah.
of it. Like a
The
short
shot
movie.
of like Nicol Bolas like looking down, like on his eyes and everything I was like that's where it got me. I was like, man, this looks nice. Like this is the first time that I've seen something visually that Magic has done that way and been like, all right, sell me a movie now. Like I know they're supposedly been making one for a decade at this point, but like, okay, sell me this
Yeah.
movie. You got me.
I'd watch the crap out of that movie.
Oh my gosh.
It can't be worse than the Warcraft movie.
No, it literally can't.
Did you watch it?
It's bad.
It was trash.
I love Duncan Jones. His movie Moon is one of my favorite movies of all time. but that movie was bad.
My dad threw me a bone and went to watch that with me and walked out. He goes, "That's like the game you like spent most of your life playing." And I went, "Yeah, that's the one right there, World of Warcraft."
You just
yeah.
go, no, not
No,
really.
really,
actually.
yeah.
What you saw there is not a proper
I
representation
don't
of
know
what
what
I've
that crap
done with
was
my
either.
time.
Please tell me you didn't play the cow person. I did.
I did.
I
was,
actually only played cow people. So
I'm
and,
torn for
and
life.
that's actually true. I was a Tauren hunter and a Tauren druid. I'm so sorry. I'm so
Oh,
sorry, Dad.
no, yeah. I think they have the best starting zone. Torrents.
Oh, yeah, come on.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool starting zone.
But the trailer has some pretty big like reveals and surprises. We know why. We know what Lyanna is doing with Nicol Bolas. She seems to be the leader of the army of Eternals known as the Death Horde.
Yes.
And which makes
Man,
sense.
What a metal band.
Yeah, that's great. We also see Dak Faden not doing so well.
We know why he doesn't get a card.
The boy done got stabbed and then his spark got stolen.
Yeah,
Now, my favorite part in the trailer, which happens really quickly, is the Eternal that steals his spark done like explodes like a sparkler. Just shoot it out. And it's just in the background of like dead Dak
Well,
Faden,
that's when it
or
gets-
at least severely injured Dak Faden.
That's when it
And
gets
it's just like this.
teleported.
It's just spraying around like one of those inflatable tube men.
That's when he gets teleported to Zordons to get a Power Ranger suit because he got a spark.
Yeah,
he got that
correct.
sweet coin.
But I think it was very effective, and it was just good. It just felt like this is Magic really putting like a lot of money into trying to market something to more than just the Magic fan.
Yeah, I would say I liked it better with sound.
Then without sound, yeah, definitely
Yeah,
a
it
market
was-
improvement.
Right.
I went and looked up that cover of in the end. It was like
Oh, so good.
and I went and looked it up. There's a person who's not very good at it who still does the rap parts. Don't listen to it. It's bad. Like her singing is just like haunting and gorgeous, and then he's like, "Oh, one thing." I don't know why. And you're like, God, no, stop it. Get it out
Oh,
of
it's
here.
bad?
Yeah, the rapping part just it doesn't work in the slow down setting because
Yeah.
he doesn't sing it, he raps it, but it's like one thing. I don't know why it does. And you're just like, no, please give me the pretty voice back. I want the
Her
voice.
was so good.
We now understand why it's just her voice in the trailer. I get
Yes,
it now.
no, gosh, please, that would be.
I get it now.
We get the extended
They
trailer.
made the
that's
smart
like,
choice. I see.
I was sad and scared and excited when I was listening to that. And that's hard to do.
Yeah, that was it was good, and I think like it sets up some real good questions for like what's going on, like what is actually happening in the plane, and I'm excited. So, do you want to talk some mechanics?
Yeah, so we have some mechanic, things that are mechanics that aren't. The first one technically isn't a mechanic, but it is a spotlight of the set, is Planeswalkers.
Oh, let me go get my body armor on before you guys start talking
Yeah.
about
No, we're gonna come back to the end.
Okay.
So Planeswalkers, there's going to be 36 Planeswalker cards in the set. They are going to be mythic rare, and uncommon. And they are all going to have a static ability, which is the first time we're seeing this on any Planeswalker cards. So I think like that is probably the biggest change, other than them changing rarity. But the static abilities, I think, is a good change. I think that's a good design choice for Planeswalkers, and I hope we see it going forward in like the mythic rarities when we still see them.
So, Morrow's Making Magic article this week, he's doing a 3-part about this, was really illuminating about their decision process for Planeswalkers, and like I guess he's had like the idea, people kept wanting to put static abilities on Planeswalkers for a while, but he's been so worried about like the shallowness of Planeswalker like designability. Like there's not a lot of depth in what you can do with a Planeswalker, and we have seen that in recent years.
Correct.
So he's like once that door fell, I knew like it was it's done. It's not coming back up. So, but he said that they set it up though. So if you want like uncommon, rare, and mythic, so uncommon static ability, 1 loyalty ability, rare static ability, 2 loyalty abilities, and then mythic static ability, 3 loyalty abilities. So that is literally how they designated the rarities, which at least is uniform. It makes some sense.
But again, having Planeswalkers all the way down to uncommon is a little, a bit different from what we've seen previously.
Or just like bad.
Or in some people's opinions, just like
Oh,
that. So, but I mean,
everybody.
that's the main takeaway for the Planeswalkers. The actual mechanics that we have, first one is a new one called Amass, and Amass X is a number. and it says put 3+1/+1 counters on an army you control. If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. So basically, this is a mechanic that allows you to either grow an army, so make it bigger, or create an army, or establish an army, I guess is a better term for that. But this is supposed to represent the Dread Horde. Excuse me. This is how they are choosing to represent this in this particular set. And this is a go tall sort of strategy instead of a go wide strategy with an army, which I think is confusing for a lot of people. And if you play, I feel like if you play like tactical strategy games, this is less confusing for you because like one unit on a tactical strategy like game board on like it could represent multiple units. So it's just like they're all just stacked on top of each other, right? Like that's how it is.
So to compare this then to Risk, so a mass 1 is like the little soldier plastic token, but a mass 2 is like a little cannon.
Right.
Like a mass 3 is like the horsey man.
Right, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Right,
That makes sense. I have to say, like the ability alone seems at least interesting, but the terminology is rough. Like amassing an army and that always being only one thing. Like unless you do something very special, like copy a token or whatever else, you literally can't have more than one army token to play at a time. So amassing an army and it being, but it's one permanent. And you're like, but I amassed an army. Like if I see a mass 3, I think my brain immediately would think like I get 3 things.
Yeah, I don't think I could cast down an army.
You're right.
Like, can I?
Well, I mean, if you're strong enough, you just like.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Can I fatal push an army?
If you're strong enough and big enough,
I got these big legs.
Watch out for these big trunks.
Well, my core is out of sight.
Kick you all.
Yeah, like Karn can make 3
with my energy legs.
With my energy legs, exactly.
Oh my god.
Yeah, we've gone back to 1999.
Like,
I don't know. It's not that old, but
it's so
I
great.
don't know. It's a weird design space. I like it. I think it's neat. It's gonna be cool for limited. I don't know about constructed applicability.
I think if you slap Bitter Blossom onto that constructed ability, it definitely becomes more appealing.
But it's not Bitter Blossom.
I mean,
so let's talk about the card. This is
I agree that it is definitely it is functionally different than Bitter Blossom in some ways. You have to think about it. You definitely think about it differently.
And the only way,
like in power level and in strength.
Well, okay, so they're not going to like print Bitter Blossom again. This is like what they could do in standard.
Let's say the card
I'm not quite an athlete like Mike Tyson.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of differences.
But I do like tigers.
Yeah.
So Dread Horde Invasion is
like nibbling on an earlobe,
is an enchantment. It's a generic and a black 4. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and amass 1. Whenever a zombie token you control with power 6 or greater attacks, it gains life like it's on a turn. So I think initially like that is the comparison you make. Like, at your upkeep, you lose a life, you make a token. But you do not do that.
You either lose life and make your token or make your token bigger.
Right.
Is a +1/+1 counter as good as another token? I don't think so.
It certainly isn't.
Yeah.
Now, it also depends on what you're doing with that token.
Attacking with it, hoping to kill my opponent.
Potentially, but you could be using it as sacrifice fodder. You could be getting rid of it every turn and getting a new one every turn.
Now that is interesting.
That's a good angle.
And like so in that sense, I'll give you maybe it's like Bitter Blossom because that's when I draft like Bitter Blossom with Skull Clamp, and I'm like I don't want to attack with these. They're just gonna draw me 2 cards.
Yeah,
that I can see, but
it's not the same card.
a lot of the things that we have in standard now. Granted, we did get a new sort of Blood Artist.
Yeah,
but even like with Judith is like non-tokens, right? A lot of their things say like non-tokens. So
the new Blood Artist doesn't say non-token though, which is valuable.
Midnight Reaper says non-token for
Correct.
drawing cards. So it's tough to use. So
I agree, but also Bitter Blossom didn't gain you life, which this card can.
It potentially can, but I
also it just says zombie, so you could play this card and it have an immediate effect.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, great. So if you do have a pre-existing, army that's already meeting this criteria, then you can play this and have a giant life flicker swinging in. So
6 is a lot.
It is a lot, but it's also theoretically possible. And like
you
obviously
this
this card is
in other ways technically, like
Yeah.
throughout
Yeah,
it. But
sure.
I think like it looks like Bitter Blossom, but I think Bitter Blossom is not a great comparison for a number of reasons.
Bitter Blossom is comparatively to power scale like way over this as far as that's concerned. So I definitely think that there are there is a comparison, but it's not a one-to-one comparison.
Sure.
I think this mechanic is very flavorful, if that makes any sense, and it's really cool if you take a look at like the tokens. Like some of them just have one like zombie guy, and then it's like, oh, here's a couple of his
they're
buddies
like rising out of this lake. The
yeah.
water, So.
And then it's like he has a whole
That's
beach
what Ravnica
party.
is known for, is a lot of lakes and standing water. I don't know.
It's the rural part of Ravnica that's my favorite. It's the not the bustling metropolis.
Well, I mean, the Gruul territory is technically that, but it's just like it's literally like abandoned towns where it's Chernobyl. Like the Gruul live in Chernobyl. Man.
Yeah, I think it's a cool mechanic. I just don't know if I agree that it's flavorful. I think it's the opposite.
I agree with that as well. I think like because of the terminology. I think.
Yeah, like I think if it were like Grow or that's a terrible name. That's like Megamorph. I don't know. I don't make games, man.
Big token.
Yeah, right. Biggerfy.
At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life and embiggen target token.
You make that token hugely.
Next up is Proliferate. So this is a returning mechanic. This was last seen in Scars of Mirrodin block, and it is if basically when you proliferate, you choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting with the uncommon planeswalkers that
Yeah.
only have downs on their abilities.
Correct. So they only get down 6. So the only way to add more counters to them, and usually when they, when you down tick them, they are left with like an odd number left over. So they usually have like one
Right.
loyalty left over, making sure that you can still keep them around for their ongoing effect if it's worthwhile. But this is a way that you can get another activation out of them by playing some proliferate spells.
Which is really neat.
I walk away for 10 seconds and I hear you say the uncommon planeswalkers are exciting for some reason.
No,
just like-
No,
Proliferate
I heard the
interacts with-
context. It's still wrong.
I said Proliferate interacts with uncommon planeswalkers.
Yes.
They're not exciting. And I don't even have a take. I just like to get the goats going before we go here.
So that is it's again a returning mechanic. We've seen it before. It's actually really exciting. They were considering putting it in, I think, as like the Simic mechanic in the previous set, and didn't. And then we were like, oh well, then it's probably not going to be proliferate. And then they're like, boom, proliferate, deal with it. And it's like that's exciting because again, we do have the Simic that care about +1/+1 counters. So we already kind of had it built into where this is, may have some play in current standard. So interesting. And it just proliferate's really popular in like EDH and stuff like that. So
Yeah, Atraxis is high.
yeah, no joke. So as far as like the planeswalkers, they're really kind of the obvious marquee of the set. There's going to be 20 uncommon planeswalkers, 3 mythic rare planeswalkers, and then 13. Is that right? Yeah,
Yes.
13 rare planeswalkers.
Is there one in every pack? Is that...
Yes,
Yes,
they're
that is
using
right.
the same seeding technology they use for Dominaria.
It'll just go to the back of the
It'll
pack.
go to the
and-
back of the pack.
Now, important to note, on Arena, since the booster packs that you buy from the store aren't obviously full packs, those will not always have a planeswalker in them. Your draft ones and your limited ones will, of course, because they are full packs. But your ones that you buy from the store or get as prize packs will not. So keep that in mind. So don't get disappointed when you don't get a shiny planeswalker in every one of your little packs. There are a lot of cards that we could definitely talk about. I'm already dreading the set review show for this because I'm going to set this up properly. We're not going to talk about every planeswalker.
No, we're not.
We are definitely not going to talk about every one of those planeswalkers. There's 20 uncommon ones, unless one really breaks out of the shell. It gets good enough to be like, well, maybe this is like a sideboard role player. Then maybe we'll talk about them.
It's
But
really sad when they design a planeswalker that's not powerful enough to feel special, isn't it? I think it's a really big downer. I agree with you, Morgan. Thank you.
just because we're not going to talk about it doesn't mean it isn't relevant. It's just not relevant for constructed.
Wait, what?
Our set review is only for constructed cards and potential cube cards
So would you call
or
it
battle box
relevant,
cards.
or-
I would say it's still relevant and limited, but we don't focus on limited. So
Seems
there.
like you don't focus at all. I don't know.
Anyway,
So I don't know.
That's a weird dig. I think you have the high ground here. I don't think you need to go slumming, okay?
We're hinting at this. Morgan and I, we had a pretty heated conversation in our Discord yesterday about these planeswalkers, and we're going to have a little bit of that conversation here. But before we do that, are there any cards spoiled so far you want to look at all? Anything that grabs your attention and says, this is what we should maybe take a look at?
That have been legitimately revealed.
So I want to point that out. Normally I would link us to Mythic Spoiler, but I have linked us to the actual card image gallery, mainly because we talked about last week how WotC's been very meticulous in giving out these cards to individual people, and like there's been a ton of outlets that have had cards, ton of individuals that had cards. The Twitter account not a wolf got like the Arlen, which was amazing.
Hilarious.
Like the tweet was just like, when Wizards of the Coast said they were going to give me a card to spoil, I assumed it would be some businessman or some this, and said they gave me wolves. I don't understand. And
That's hilarious.
It's very good.
But be wary. There are definitely some very bad leaks that are out there,
and that's frustrating because the way that the leaks are coming, that probably means the people who got these preview cards have been leaking them, and it's like,
yeah,
man, like why would you do that? This is a cool time to do that. They trusted you to do this thing. They could have trusted us to do that thing. Dan,
Dan's not the person we need to yell at.
I don't care. I'm going to yell at Dan.
That's fine. You do you.
Who do you want to yell, Morgan?
Huh?
Who do you think we should yell at? Give me a name.
No one. We should yell at anyone at Wizards because we haven't asked anyone at
Elon
Wizards directly.
Musk? Elon?
Yeah, that's fine. We can yell at Elon Musk. He's not great.
Rich. Oh God, we're a PG show, aren't we?
Yeah,
Yes.
you've already exceeded our
I
cost
already
limit.
used my swear.
Yeah,
So-
so I do want to talk about the new Teferi. So Teferi Time Raveler. He is CMC of 3. He is 1 a blue-white for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. His static ability is each opponent can cast spells only at a time they could cast sorcery. And it says he has a +1. It says until your next turn you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So kind of like Quicken. And then his actual card kind of did a similar thing, right?
No, the Teferi Mage of Zalfir is very similar to this.
Yes.
So this feels like Teferi again, if that makes sense.
Yes, and this -3 is return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand and then draw a card. I think that this card is like what you want in your control sideboard in Standard, like 100%. It feels real good. It feels real good to be like, your counter spells are now irrelevant. Congratulations.
But then it also counteracts the opposing Teferi, so you can play a normal game with its +1.
Yeah,
which is like a good way to like make the mirror not abysmal, you know.
But I definitely like this card. You are probably going to see like a lot of people that can now like instant speed Kai's Wraths, which will be gross. Or how about instant speed Thought Erasure and draw step Thought Erasure? Like,
Yeah, it's not bad.
there are definitely a lot of things that this card does. I think it's a sideboard card. Maybe main deckable, but I definitely think it's a sideboard card. It is a rare as well, so that's why we have the the 2 abilities there. But I like this card a lot because I've been playing a lot of Esper, and they gotta stop playing like just like look at Teferi and be like, yeah, you're just like playable. Like just don't even have to think twice about it. Just like, yep, I'm probably gonna put you in the sideboard there. The card that's on this linked list as well is Dovin's Veto, or Dovin's Ban, which it should be called.
A lot of people said when they first read that card, they thought it was just Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito.
It's Danny DeVito. It's what it is.
So that is blue and a white for an instant. It's this spell can't be countered, and it's counter target non-creature spell. So it's just negate plus, like non-counterable negate for something that's harder to cast. It could have implications in Modern, in like the blue-white control decks, but again, probably not much past that. Again, negate is popular because it's easier to cast, but in Standard, I think it goes a lot. It does a lot more, in my opinion. I think you're probably just going to be playing that if you're playing Esper or Jeskai. You're just going to be playing that over negate a lot of the time, and just being like, "Cool, you can't counter this," and your Teferi's gone.
Yeah,
So those are like my 2 front runners of like cards that I like out of this set so far.
Just looking at this list, I'll just talk about one card for now, just because we're gonna have a lot to talk about. But the one thing I would want to mention, there's a lot of interesting sacrifice effects in this format already.
Yeah.
So like Liliana got it's like a Liliana's edict essentially.
It's,
that was one of the promos.
it's Liliana's Triumph.
Yes. Gideon also has a triumph, which is like a person sacrifices attacking or blocking creature.
Oh, it's not. It's a creature that attacked or blocked
a creature
this
that attacked or
turn.
blocked this turn, and then if you control the Gideon Planeswalker,
It's two. That's real good.
But I'm talking about Ongrath's Rampage, which was a black and a red for a sorcery. Choose one. Target player sacrifices an artifact, they sack a creature, or they sack a Planeswalker. I really like 2-mana sack on a creature is always kind of solid, but this deals with a lot of interesting permanence. Now, granted, Bedevil hasn't seen like a ton of play in Targets.
Bedevil.
But I think like this is a really interesting card to me. That like 2 of those are now granted. We're about to see a lot more Planeswalkers, but who knows how playable they'll be.
Yeah.
These 2 of those permanents at the very least are pretty good gets off of this card, and like being able to just like hit a creature no matter what is pretty solid. So, and the flavor text makes me real sad. One of the things I am liking about this, so each Planeswalker is getting like a spell, and it looks like most of them are getting a creature as well. And like a lot of the flavor texts are those Planeswalkers talking. And Ongrath here says, "Grand City? No, this is nothing but another squalid cage." If you follow the Ixalan story at all, like Ongrath was stuck on Ixalan for years and like missed his family. He's like, I want to see my Minotaur children. And then he gets to leave to go see his Minotaur children. And like 6 months later, it's like, why am I in Ravnica? I want to see my Minotaur kids.
I'm interested to see why Ongrath's here, because his Planeswalker card, he amasses. Like, that is his ability. That is his minus.
Interesting.
And I like, is he a baddie?
I would have a hard time believing that.
Me too.
Now, granted, like, he gives some reasons as to why he's on Ixalan. He could certainly have been on Ixalan for the same reason that Vraska was, and he just like sucked at it. And like, what, you know what I mean? Like, so maybe that's it. But
I want to know. That's why I'm interested in reading the book, because like I hope that they go into that at least a little bit, because he didn't seem like a bad guy in the Ixalan story. From what like
no, he's a bad guy. He was a bad guy.
Well,
he did try to kill Huatli pretty quickly.
Okay,
like,
fair enough.
And could have, I think. Like,
I guess like they
he awoken her spark by trying to kill her with a chain around her neck. So yeah, he's a great guy.
No, I'm not. Okay, fine. You got me there. But I mean, like, he was more like fleshed out as far as like a red-black character. He wasn't just like I'm a villain.
Sympathetic red-black character for
there
sure.
You go. That's what I'm trying to get at.
He was just a dad.
He's like the Thanos of.
I don't think Thanos is sympathetic.
Dad wanting to see his kids is not Thanos trying to like kill a lot of people.
I think Thanos is
Santa's very sympathetic.
Yeah, also a red-black planeswalker. Weirdly enough,
I mean, it matches his suit, right? He's got the black boots. He's probably Mardu. He's got the white trim on the suit as well. So
okay.
Realistically,
so before we pack this up here this week,
oh boy,
I want to take a minute.
I need my riot gear.
Just sit right here.
I'll tell you about a story about bad design.
I just want to point out, and Morgan disagrees with me, and that's fine, and it's okay. The reason Morgan and I got into a pretty heated argument, Morgan wasn't really listening to me, and that's okay. He kind of hated me as a person, and that's okay too.
That's not true at all.
It's not fun when you.
Mike and I have heated discussions, and I think it's important because we don't. If we all just agreed with each other all the time, then we wouldn't have a very interesting podcast at all.
Like, well, this is cool. So yeah,
I really want to turn Morgan's mic down when he talks about planeswalkers here in a second. I just want to.
You can't be like an impartial participant in this if you're like already on Mike's side.
To be fair, I don't actually have a horse. I'm not going to buy Magic cards.
I think
that's smart. It's just a smart move.
I think I'm just really disappointed with what these uncommon planeswalkers are and what they look like, and what WotC is doing to their characters to make this happen. Not all of them. Some of the uncommons are close. I tried yesterday to give some credit to the ones I think are okay. Arlen seems okay. Kiora is a cool design. But there's a number of characters who are showing up for the first time, like they have never been anywhere else, or where they have been has been very minor. This includes like Teo, who is going to be the main character in our novel for Ravnica. Teo the Shield Mage is 2 generic and a white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. You have hexproof, -2, create a 0/3 wall. The Wanderer, which is like already getting cosplayed. You know what I mean? Like Moxie MTG has already cosplayed the Wanderer because it's so cool. The Wanderer is an uncommon 3 generic and a white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Prevent non-combat damage will be dealt to you in permanent to control. -2, exile a creature with power 4 or greater. Cool. Very flavorful, I think. Nope, not at all. Davriel also gets a planeswalker card here. Again, they hired this incredible author to write this whole planeswalker for him. He gives this planeswalker one of the most unique abilities we've seen a planeswalker have, and they're like, I don't know, here's 3 mana, he discards cards, and he's also Shrieking Affliction. We did it, guys. We solved it. we have these characters who just haven't shown up in sets, or are new characters who this is their big introduction, and they are just bad Magic cards. And like, I think like going back to because like Moore and I talked a lot about this like yesterday, like if these were just like you keep comparing them to like, oh well, they're just like enchantments. To say if they were just enchantments, then like I wouldn't feel this way. But WotC has decided to use this design space to depict a war. That's what Maro's article today was yesterday was talking about, was depicting this war. Though the characters are here, but they're all bad. No wonder Bolas is going to eat all their stupid sparks like a bowl of crunch berries. Like, they're bad. They suck. What is like? Why are they here?
Yeah, because we always know that what is depicted on the card is, of course, the limit of what the Planeswalkers are capable of doing within the story.
I mean, do you see Dak? Like, he got Kalimard like pretty quickly.
So let me like try to structure this a little bit, because I thought this conversation was interesting, because I don't think I actually care about the result. I just the argument was great. Morgan, you mentioned in the chat, and I'm just kind of cherry picking things people say because.
That's always a good way to structure.
Well, no, I'm cherry picking this because it's a broad thing. You think Mike's reasoning is poor for this thing, and I'm curious as to, we didn't really flesh that thought out in the chat, and why you think that logic is poor, or what your counter logic is.
I just think that
there.
Planeswalkers are more than just their cards in the set. Like they're deeper characters than just what their card says they do. People care about Planeswalkers not because their cards are good or bad. That helps. Don't get me wrong. That helps people, especially competitive players, especially Spikes, like Planeswalkers, because those Planeswalkers were good to them. They allowed them to succeed in previous, competitive tournaments, and that helps for that side of the player base. But people like Planeswalkers for more than just their cards. They like them because they're designed well, or they have deep backs, designed well as in like character design, not card design. People like them because they do have backstories that are important, and some of these characters do, and some of these characters don't, or will have them in the future. And there are a lot more reasons why people like Planeswalkers than just how good the card is in a constructed format.
Okay, and that's where I think like and I appreciate you giving some shade on this context
yeah.
because like it's hard to be nuanced here. One, I want to make, because I made this very clear yesterday when we were discussing this. I'm not upset that WotC is doing this. I'm really not.
Yeah, neither am I.
I mean, like, I'm cool with him experimenting. Again, Mara's article was really insightful into like him being pretty afraid of like how shallow the pool is here. These cards don't have to be constructed playable. I wouldn't expect most of them to be. Most Planeswalkers aren't constructed playable, but they are playable, right? And most of them do tell a story about their character in that specific moment. They have their generic designs. We've talked about the plus minus weird alt, right? But in this case, almost again with this, I think Kiora is the one that tells the most successful story to me out of these uncommon Planeswalkers, because she literally does summon giant Leviathans. She helps you cast them. She gets a bonus for you if you cast a big thing. That's good. Arlen makes wolf tokens, which is honestly pretty on par with the generic stuff, but like that helps. But the main thing being here, like, we have a static effect. We tick down for 2. We ended an odd number. Like, they found the safe thing they could do with it, and then they copy and pasted it for each character, and then tried to make the colors flesh out the way they needed to, so it could fit it on common, so you could see them, so the ASFAB could be right, so you could see them, or ASFAN, so you can see them in a pack the way you're supposed to.
And so they didn't break the limited format.
No, and of course not. But again, like if these were enchantments that were pushed a little bit more in an enchantment based block like Theros, most of them would still be pretty forgettable. Like, it's not about just breaking like limited. I get it. They have to balance them because you're going to put them in every single pack. I get that. But like, if your goal is to do that, then like I start to question like what your full on point is here. Like, hey, 20 of these Planeswalkers won't ever see any actual play, right?
Constructed,
and a lot of casual formats. Most of them are just pretty bad so far. And I mean, it's hard to objectively say otherwise. They are pretty bad.
I don't know how the limited format looks like yet. I don't know if these are going to be relevant in the limited format, and I think you have to wait till the whole thing.
I'm not even talking about there though. Like I get,
but that's another format. That's where these cards. You say they won't get played.
Yes, but then what I'm asking then, if the only point of it was so you could see these Planeswalkers in limited, that was it. But they're not going to tell the story. They're not going to connect to the characters.
The story is in the book.
Okay, then I'm asking them, what was the point of this? What purpose do these things actually
Because
serve?
you can't have the storyline and then this set not have a bunch of planeswalkers in it.
Okay,
Period.
so but if that's your answer, then it is bad design. Like you are forcing a bad design choice because of that. Like that, it just there is no other outcome there.
But I just don't like. I just don't think that's bad design. That's design that they chose. That's design that has to be the way they are, by the way they constructed the storyline. Now you can say that maybe the storyline. Do you think the storyline is bad where they've taken it to?
I like the story where it's at, but I am frustrated that I know that like these new characters who are going to get the short shrift in the book. They're going to because they're not major characters, so they're just here literally to fill up space in a set.
But you don't know where these characters are going to go.
Okay,
That's the thing.
I mean,
The places you'll go.
yeah,
Because you don't know what are the implications of the story. The definite implications is there's going to be planeswalkers that die.
yeah, and you know,
And it could-
so we created a bunch of uncommon red shirts, so we don't. Have to
But I
worry
don't think that's the case. I think that's the pessimistic take to go with it and run with it. I think they're going to kill planeswalkers that are
yeah,
prominent
that matter.
now.
They're going to kill some of those too, for sure.
So
You kill one that matters and 10 red shirts.
So
Like,
let's
that's
take a
how
look
it
at
works.
let's take a look at comic books, right? Like you have established characters, you have established heroes that are going to go on and have multiple runs of stories. But eventually they got to figure out how to pass the torch to another character, right? And usually that happens by either a death or being unable to continue to be that superhero, whether it be age or injury or something like that, or like I said, or death. So they do have to introduce those characters at some point in time.
Right.
So why not do it the best way that one of the ways that a lot of things have happened in the MCU is in a large scale team up sort of event, right? So think about Spider-Man getting introduced to the MCU. Was in Civil War.
No. I'm aware. I'm trying to think of another character like that.
I think you have like the Falcon showing up in Winter
Captain-
Soldier.
Nope, in Captain America, right.
Yeah, Winter Soldier.
Not a big team up movie. He's a major character in Captain America's storyline.
But you still have to. I'm just saying, you still have to introduce these characters.
I gotta tell you dip into the MCU is actually probably your biggest counter argument. The MCU has shown over and over again that the way to be successful is to give your major players their own spotlight first and then bring them together. The DCU tried to do the approach where you throw them all together at once and see what happens, and it was trash. Like, with the exception of Spider-Man, you actually don't have a character like that. Most of them, the one who have shown up in secondary movies, they've shown up with 2 or 3. Iron Man, you got Iron Man, and then a little bit of War Machine, and that's where you got, I can't think of Scarlett Johansson's character, Black Widow.
Yeah.
Like, that's where you got that, right? Like, you get 1 or 2 characters in there so you can have a major spotlight. But everyone from Ant-Man to Doctor Strange got their own movie, and then you brought them together. So I think that's actually that's the point for me.
But see, the thing is,
and Spider-Man also was a large character in the national spotlight, so you didn't have to worry about that. If Teo was a guy who
Sure.
was like, I don't know, was the main character of like Magic Arena, and it was like, don't worry, there's a lot of people who knew Teo. He doesn't need an introduction. Then sure, that makes sense. But like,
but you got to do it at some point in time, right?
yeah.
And the fact is that they are going ahead with this at this point, and
Yep.
I agree that think when you do take a look at the MCU, while Spider-Man was an established character, right?
Who had already had 5 feature films.
But it's still technically new to
5 feature films.
Marvel Cinematic Universe. When you take a look at that, you do have that history. WotC doesn't have that, so
But no, they do have that. So what was the set I compared this to you when we were discussing it yesterday?
to Dominaria.
Yes, Dominaria, which had all of that history and could just touch on those characters who had a bright history and was immediately bold and inventive with what they're doing with Legends. Now, Legends are easier to do that with.
Yeah,
But even the
because you
card-
can harken back to past sets that
Sure.
you have history with.
Sure, but I mean, the same thing was true for like for sagas, right? Like an innovative take on a card type that functioned here better. When you look at this set comparatively, you can tell that they are stretching Planeswalkers at Uncommon to the max of their design abilities, which is a shallow pool. It's a shallow pool. The designers themselves said it's a shallow pool, so they have to be super careful with it. And 2, this doesn't feel. Dominaria felt like that when they hit upon like, oh, this is the set of Legends, this is a set of history, was great. War of the Spark being the set of Planeswalkers sounds like it sounds like Kamigawa being the set of Legends as opposed to Dominaria being the set of Legends, and that's in my where I go in my mind with it is like one of those things did it very correctly, and the other one just said we like this, so let's put a lot of them in there, and I feel like they're afraid of repeating the Kamigawa mistake, so they're making sure that these things are probably only limited playable, but they're losing out on both the storytelling aspect and the excitement of being able to play the card. Because if a character doesn't have a big storyline, right, like or doesn't have a huge story connection, one of the ways to sort of jump that, to cheat that, is to give a card that makes memories, right? That's how you do that. They're doing neither here. They are literally doing neither here, and I think that's a disservice to the character. Again, I haven't seen the whole set. A lot of the Planeswalkers could be great, but these uncommon Planeswalkers who don't have a lot of story, they're burning design space for little reason, little gain, and they're also burning the connection between the player and the card. And I think, like, yesterday, I think you were a little bit dismissive of that. But, like, I know myself and Keller, who's friend of the show and has been on the show before, are big Vorthos guys, and we're upset about this. He texted me personally about how frustrated he is by the Davriel card because he loved that story and loved that character, and they didn't put any effort into it.
I guess I don't know. Like, does that make you like that character less?
Yeah. Well, I think it makes me think that WotC doesn't give a crap if I like that character.
Yeah, but you never know what's going to happen. Like if how
Yeah, probably die.
But you don't know that.
He's a red shirt.
But I don't think that's how this is going to be set up. I think that there's going to be new characters introduced, and they're going to be the characters that are going to be the new flagships that are going to take off in the future. I think if you introduce a bunch of if it turns out that they're just a bunch of cannon fodder, then I think that I'm going to agree with you. I think that's bad. I think that's a terrible way to pull this off and to do this. But I think you have to, if you're going to take this, you're going to introduce these new characters. And maybe the cards aren't going to do it correctly. Maybe I have lost that point. You're not going to. These cards are limited cards. It is. That's how
they are fodder.
That is true.
Themselves are fodder.
That is how they have built the storyline to this conclusion. That is what they have done, and they needed to have this big moment.
The war element.
They had to do this. At the very least, they had to pay off what they've been paving the road for with Nicobolas and his machinations. So this was an inevitability for me. Now, did I think it was going to be as extreme as they did it? Maybe not. But I'm not going to write out these cards just because they are limited playable at best. And I don't need, if I'm invested and interested in a character, I don't need the card to be good to pique my interest in them. Like that means that my interest in characters would be constantly vacillating every set. Like you wouldn't have a favorite.
WotC's selling that. I want you to understand. WotC is selling that. They want that to be true.
But everyone has you have a favorite if you're invested.
Sure, of course you do.
So it doesn't mean
that's
why
everyone's favorite is Jace the Mind Sculptor, and no one can tell you what the ultimate of Jace the Living Guild.
But is it Jace the is it the card or the character?
It's both at the same time.
But I don't think that that's always true for every single player.
Okay.
It can't be true for every single player.
I don't
There
think
are
I'm
people
saying
that
it's true for
don't.
every single player,
but that's the connection that you're trying to make. You're trying to say that people like Planeswalkers because their cards are good.
No, I 100% didn't make that argument.
I think for the point that, just to kind of translate what people are saying, I think the point that he's generally making, and if I'm wrong, correct me, is that people initially connect with the story via the card mechanic and via cards, and
But I don't think that's true anymore. I think that people are getting past that. I think that people.
So you think somebody comes into the Magic story from the story side, not the game side?
Correct, or comes in from the con side and not the game side, or the cosplay side, not the game side, or their story side, not the game side. Magic is bigger than just the card game now, and that's what WotC is actually trying to sell. That's why WotC is trying to make a movie. That's why WotC is getting good people.
For a decade.
That's why they're getting. Maybe not, but those rumors are still rumors, and they could still be something that's coming down the pipeline. I mean, WotC is trying to make Magic bigger than just the card game, so that people who don't want to play the card game can still get into Magic and still get into the characters.
Sure. So I guess.
So Mike, if Jace has a bad card, do people like Jace less as a character?
So I mean, I do think that's probably true a little bit. I do think that's probably true a little bit.
I just I don't think that's how favorites work though. I just don't.
I think that the imagery that WotC even sells at its tournaments it tells you differently. They find the card image and the thing that has connected the players most. That's why the image of Jace is is the Mind Sculptor. That's why the image of Chandra is going to be Torch of Defiance. Like, it's going to be that. And again, it doesn't have to be always a good or great Magic card. Those two were good and great Magic cards. But you mentioned, like, Dovin like, yesterday. Like, Dovin card told me the story of that character. It did.
I guess it just didn't to me.
I mean, like,
as far as
deactivating someone's ability to function, like being a law mage, and then winter orbing people, which is just exactly what a white blue person wants to do. You just terrible monsters, don't let people play the game. Like that made sense to me. And Dovin did see play.
I think his I think his mechanics make sense with his color identity.
Sure,
you can sell me on that, but I don't think I saw Dovin Bond's card and was like, oh, I know exactly what he does. Like who his character was or anything like that. I think flavorfully speaking,
I think you're gonna look at that card and see a lot better than when you get the uncommon like white blue hybrid printing. That's like creatures you control have +0/+1, -2, make a 1/1 Thopter with flying, 5 loyalty.
Well, I think I'll say this about Morgan's point though, is that once you do get in through the story, it's easier to interpret Dovin Bond's character. And
Sure,
I
don't disagree with that.
I think because like I didn't know that about Dovin Bond,
Sure,
because I'm not a story guy. But like now that if I were a guy that came in through the story and then read the card, I think that'd be a lot cooler. I think that cuts both ways because there's a lot to be said both ways.
I'm not trying to make a unilateral definition here because. And I think that's why I got frustrated with our conversation yesterday is because, you were saying that my reasoning was flawed, but I do think that you heavily disregarded that like 40% of the people in our 40% of the people that interacted in our Discord are upset by the way these characters are being taken. And I'm not saying that we represent 40% of the player base, but from the Vorthos level, yeah, there's going to be a lot of people turned off by this. And again, I'm not saying WotC should have done it, but I do think that they are tapping a design well that they will not be able to tap again. And I think they're doing it poorly.
Here's the thing. I don't think Uncommon Planeswalker is going to be a thing that they do after this for a very, very long time.
Static ability on Planeswalkers, they're burning 36 of them right now.
It doesn't mean they can't be used again in the future.
It does for a long time, though. That's how their design cycle works. It does for a long time. I'm telling you,
6 years
that's
out,
literally
right?
what Mark Rosewater said. He was afraid of letting that door fall because he knows that it's going to be hard to go back without that while also not repeating the same thing.
Let me ask you a question, just from a design perspective. Do you think that the story could be? I mean, I think Morgan's right in the sense that we don't know what the story is going to be, but we're talking about how a lot of these characters that we don't know a lot about yet are going to end up being insignificant because of these characters. I could very well see that being a part of the storytelling element, that Planeswalkers aren't special, that you came to fight this battle you were supposed to fight and you died because you're not special.
But
I mean, and you might not like that story that they tell.
But the name of the set's War of the Spark, the Planeswalker Spark. I don't think that you could say it's not.
Yeah, but half of the people in the Marvel Cinematic Universe just died, and that was these people were special.
But that's where comic books and so far what what Magic is differ. For the most part in Magic, when someone dies, they are dead.
Yeah.
The only difference so far, and that's the nature. I say this
post-mending,
because that's the nature of the mending. That was their whole point. Is they wanted the Venser isn't going to magically show up more of the spark and be like, hey, I grew a new heart.
Yeah,
you know
Elspeth's dead, right?
No, Elspeth is actually not dead. She never died. She's just in the underworld. Theros is weird, man. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, and Koth will never die, but I think it's important that Urza's dead. Urza's not coming back here.
Gotcha.
He's dead. That is just where we're at. So I guess except for Nicol Bolas, that is
anyway.
Thing. But that was pre-mending.
That was pre-mending.
But I think in the MCU, that half those people got wiped out. Sorry for the spoilers. Endgame comes out in a month. If you haven't seen Infinity War, it's on you. I don't.
Yeah,
know.
That's true. 100%.
Dies in episode 9 of season 1, guys.
But I think you upset Cap, who's here to record our baseball podcast. We're doing after this. Hey, there you go.
Yeah, Church Baseball podcast.
But we know that the result of Endgame is going to be most of those people coming back, and Marvel already told us that by having a Spider-Man trailer for a movie where he's dead. Spider-Man's dead, and he's got a trailer for a movie you can watch this summer. So I think that's not WotC's thing. Now, granted, they have taken a couple of steps that direction because the Chandra comic takes place. It's already in print. Takes place after War of the Spark, so Chandra lives. Spoiler alert, I guess. And I will tell you this, part of this, for me, is frustration of the Vorthos level. Kel and I were realizing at the same time that we're probably going to get the ending of War of the Spark spoiled by the cards in the spoiler before we have a chance to buy the book. And that is stupid, because we had that happen once already, because I read both parts of Godsend for Theros, and we got Deicide before I could finish reading Godsend. I was like, oh, okay, cool, Xenagos died.
Yeah.
Thanks, I guess.
I guess if the only thing that you care about is the result of the like the end of the book and not necessarily how the journey you take to get
and I'm
there.
going to be very honest here. I need you to stop being dismissive in that sense. Of course I am. They're selling that. They're selling a book. So why wouldn't I be frustrated about that? Like you're saying,
It's, a story is more than just its ending, though.
It's all of it, but like an ending is important. It's this is an ending to not just like a storyline and a set. This is an ending to 10 years of card details. Again, I think like if you're suggesting that like not every player thinks this one way, and then I'm telling you that as a player who is invested in Vorthos, this is a big deal to me, and you're like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. That's really messed up.
I don't know. Like
You don't know that that's messed up?
No, I don't. I don't know how. I don't know how WotC can expect to please everyone.
They
though.
can't, but they're pretending to try to.
So what would you rather them do?
I don't. Again, and I said this yesterday. I don't have a perfect answer to this, right?
And
Maybe
I don't think I do either. But I at least can accept what they're doing.
Again, and that's where I think that this is where we differed yesterday when I was talking to you about this. I also accept what they're doing as well. I'm not upset that they're actually doing it. I've always been happy when they push and try new things. But the suggestion that I can't be critical of it when literally like we sit here and be critical of these things like that is us, on here all the time. And like, two, like you're wanting WotC to be able to have their cake and eat it too, where like they can try these things and ignore, listen to these things, but also pretend like they're catering to these audiences. Like I'm not upset they're doing the thing, but I'm allowed to criticize them, and I'm allowed to be upset when I think they are, doing when they are literally selling me the opposite of what they're pretending to sell me, if that makes sense. You seem to come at this from the situation of like, well, I'm just wrong to be critical of these things, and I shouldn't be, and I think that's frustrating because like, why can't I be critical of it? I mean, I've been waiting for this book. I've had a pre-order on this book for a long time now. Like, why shouldn't I be frustrated that they're not going to give it to me before they do this? Why shouldn't I be frustrated that the characters they want me to be attached to they have decided are frivolous? Like, why shouldn't I be frustrated about that? If the trailer for Infinity War showed the dusting, right? Wouldn't that frustrate you? And they say, well, it doesn't matter. That's just the ending. Where you come watch the movie, that'll make sense. No, you'd be pissed.
I mean, yes, I get what you're trying to say. I don't know how WotC circumvents that. Like,
well, they released the book in March as opposed to April,
and then obviously, then people who get the book in March get to tell everyone who lives and dies.
Yeah, okay. The art books have been doing this now for 2 years.
The art books don't come out until the whole set is out.
I think to the point that I think you make this point that like the games are different for different people. The people that are invested in the cards aren't necessarily. I think Mike and like Keller are a very interesting crossbreed of like very competitive players that care very deeply about the story.
Yes.
I don't check both those boxes, right?
I to
check
be honest,
either of those boxes.
I'm a competitive card player. I don't know.
I don't think a lot of people check both those boxes, which I think is
I
weird because like
and play other games. I don't know.
The degenerate box. That's you. Okay, and I check that box too, so it's okay.
I just think that like I think the overarching point is like Magic is different things for different people, and that's like the coolest thing about Magic.
Sure.
And then I think you've got the greatest point of all is that like Magic is trying to sell different avenues for people to come in, and then there is this very real struggle with like. I think you make a very good point that like, hey, let them try it. Like, this is a cool design space. Let's see how it fleshes out. And I think at the same time, Mike has this really cool perspective or important perspective of like, I am the type of person that comes into the game from multiple facets, and when one of those is hurt, I'm hurt. So I think you'd be concerned if there was a person that would touch Magic from the story perspective, but get spoiled through other means or less than cool means, or like the story's weakened because of what they're doing with cards. I don't know. It's tough because I don't actually care about the result of this, but it's a really interesting conversation. Because I definitely hear what you're saying, Morgan. Is like the design space is cool. Planeswalkers are hard to make. Let's make ones that are different than +1. Draw a card, neg 3, kill a guy, neg 8, win the game. Like that's boring, but it's also like really important that all different types of players get touched by the type of stuff that they do with all the products.
I'm just trying to say that if a Planeswalker that you like, if your connection to them is cheapened by them getting a bad card, then did you really like that character in the first place?
If it's the only card they've ever printed for it, yes.
Then what connection do you have with that Planeswalker in the first place?
I mean, it's honestly kind of what I'm saying to you. I don't have a chance to, and I never will have a chance to. Do you want the best example of this?
Go.
It's Joria. Joria is the example of this. Mark Rosewater's talked about it for years and talked about Dominaria. How when they printed Joria, right, people wanted a Joria card forever, and then they messed up and they had to put a different card's abilities on Joria, and people were really upset about it. And he made it literally his mission when we went back to Dominaria is to please print them a commander version of Joria that had something to do with her abilities, because people never stopped being upset at him for being like, my character got this card.
But that's a character with pre-existing history.
Sure, so then what's the point of the other character? Why should I ever care? They're a bad card and they're a nothing character. Why did you make it?
Because okay, you and Keller both like Darville Kane not because he had a card, because he was in a story, and
Yes,
it's
and
disappointing that his
his card
card
doesn't do anything.
is not bad. But if that makes you dislike the character anymore, then what was
No,
the
but
point?
It makes me question WotC's motivation. I'm not telling you it makes me dislike the character more. I'm telling you I'm questioning WotC's motivation. Like, and the fact that I think you find that weird is odd, because we can go back and listen to every cast where we talked about Nexus of Fate, and I will play it back to you about how you question everything about WotC's design decisions there. And
It
then you're
doesn't mean that I
wondering why
can't.
I'm being critical
It doesn't
here.
mean I can be critical about one thing and not critical about the other thing.
No,
and
but
suddenly,
you've decided that I can't be.
Can I
and that's
keep
what
this
the weird
cup
thing is here.
that you have? It's really nice Pokemon on it, and I'm connected to none of these Pokemon.
I'm not saying that you can't be critical, but
I'm going to go back to the Discord. You definitely did.
I just don't agree with where you're coming
let's
from,
pull
because
the
it just
transcript.
it doesn't ring true to me. It doesn't
Okay,
ring.
that's
Well, that's
fine.
fair, but you say
I'm
all
a
the time that
different
it's
I'm a
different
different
people.
fan of the game than you are, and you very realistically have suggested that the frustration I'm expressing here isn't legitimate, and you are not a fan of the game the way that I am. It doesn't mean that I'm specifically right here, but I am just telling you that you should at least recognize that the criticism is legitimate, even if you disagree with it. You can disagree with criticism, but it's legitimate criticism, because people disagreed with Nexus of Fate, but your criticism was still legitimate. That's what I want here.
Okay,
These are a bunch of nerds.
I get it.
You're
I
here.
understand. It's true. You wanted to be on this cast. You knew what was going to
Yeah,
happen.
you asked to come.
Oh yeah.
Don't let him fool you.
I agree. Okay, your criticism is legitimate. All right, you can definitely criticize it. I just think you're kind of giving WotC a short shrift by saying that.
Of course I am. I'm making this assessment based on spoilers, and I own that wholeheartedly.
And I'm not willing to step on that bridge with you. I have faith that they wouldn't. If they introduce these characters just to kill them off or not go anywhere with them after they do it, then yeah. But I'm 100% on board. They're making terrible.
Doug Bayer, right? It's
Yeah.
already confirmed that every single Planeswalker in this set who isn't a main character, so outside of Teo, this means like the Wanderer here, Davriel, are going to get minor character moments, and that's it. That's all they're going to get in the book and the story.
But that's fine.
But then, like, again, like who cares about the Wanderer then? Like, literally, it's like, let's make a Planeswalker
Someone.
called the question mark.
Someone
and
will.
then we won't give them a name.
But that's a mystery. That's a
No,
thing that people get
that's
hooked
literally
on.
a box to sell a condo. It's the allure of a mystery without actually having a mystery.
But the idea that again, maybe in this story they may not have that marquee moment. All right, fair enough. They're in the set because the set needs planeswalkers, and they can't just have all the planeswalkers that exist already.
Sure.
Because they are setting those stories up later as well.
Sure.
Um,
But that's where I just want, and I get that, but that's to just, because I want to close this because we've talked about this before, but that's where I want you to stop and at least consider what I'm talking about. If the character literally exists and the card exists because they needed to fill a slot, historically, that's been where design goes to die. Because they were forced to make something to fill something. That was literally the problem with Kamigawa. Let's make everything a legend because we need legends. And it led to game-breaking things. And I'm not saying War of the Spark's doing that at all. And I'm not upset with doing that. But I think if you're literally the logic you just went to is, we needed planeswalkers, and we don't have enough good characters to fill the role, so let's invent stuff that we might come back to later, that's a problem. That is a gap in what they're trying to do. For something they're trying to immerse people in and make this flavorful experience and make, like, again, Morrow wants this War of the Planeswalkers to feel like a war, but here's the thing with war. The reason you shoot Nazis in war games is because you don't care about them. That's the same thing we're putting a faceless planeswalker in who might just die or never appear again. You are putting in the NPC that doesn't matter so that you can fill a slot. And that's my frustration.
the NPCs are it just feels like by nature of inventing these characters that these characters have diverse ability sets, right? So if these characters have ability sets that you can take advantage of, it'd be a shame to kill them off. unless you've already explored their design space, what they have with the senior planeswalkers, with the Lilianas, the Jaces, the Chandras.
Senior
And we got
Planeswalkers.
junior executive, the Wanderer.
Does anybody have anything?
So why would you kill off?
I know. It's all right.
It's all right.
No, it's not all right.
This is
It is
my-
all right. We needed this. This is catharsis.
So why would
He bought you a
you?
pizza.
he
wha-
did. Thank you for the pizza.
You're welcome. So if I just try to put myself in WotC's shoes the best that I can and do my best to not assume that they are trying to do a disservice to the player base and the people. And if I'm in their shoes and I'm in that design space, why am I going to introduce a character that could potentially have more of a design path, more of an interesting design path forward? Why would I do that just to immediately cut off that design path?
Is it possible that it's not malicious and just bad decision making?
And I think that's where I'm getting at. I'm not saying that somebody made a purposely bad
Nobody
decision.
like made Smuggler Copter to introduce a standard ban list, right? Like, but it was just a bad choice, and like sometimes we make bad choices.
I guess
It's a cool idea. I think this idea is super cool. I think the idea of like Planeswalkers running at Nicol Bolas is super sweet. I think the idea of like shutting this podcast off right now is really neat. But like sometimes we just make misguided decisions. And,
It just
I think Jordan forgot what it's like to be in a room with us for a long period of time. Sometimes
It
I
just-
just like I did this on Discord yesterday.
in this particular spot, I just have a hard time thinking that this is their big moment. This is something they've invested a lot of money, time, and effort into, and for us to just sit here and be like, "Yeah, they probably messed it up," just feels bad to me.
I think I can look at uncommon planeswalkers and say I don't like these, and I'm allowed to do that, and it's not a big deal. Again, I'm not saying that WotC's made some giant mistake. I worry for planeswalkers in general, right? And I think like that's just where I'm at with it. Okay, the last little analogy I'll give you, because I'm literally done, because I'm going to do this, is just
You need another one?
yes, Super Smash Brothers has 1 million characters, right?
yeah.
But if they presented they had 400 characters, right? Because you can reskin Nest to be 15 different colors, right? And if we're just making planeswalkers fill a slot, then we're just reskinning so we can like fill a slot. That's all it is. So I'm done. I'm not responding to anything else you say. Close it out. Bye, everybody.
Fair enough.
Hey, on 420, you can do the thing and go to a Magic tournament. Bye.
I mean, we have to
Like Twitter and like Patreon, Twitter at your Endstep.
Yeah,
It's
do
an
the
at
page-
symbol, your Endstep. You can follow us. You can if you want to unsubscribe and never listen to us argue again. I get it.
Do the Patreon in 6 months, not today. I don't know.
If you want to yell at Morgan because he's wrong at Morg War Marshal, you can just go attack him on Twitter. I'm at his home. I'll give you his personal address. Just DM me. So
thanks, guys.
His cat's name's Weatherby. Say mean things about his cat. He loves it. Bye.
My cat did not consent you to like dox him. Don't dox my cat.
Hey, can I plug this new project I'm doing?
No,
Okay, bye.
you can't ask
It's 6 months.
can't ask for something nice after you did something mean. You weirdo.
you can plug it on my mic.
Twitch.tv/HisWhoGaming. Bye.
He's playing Legend of the Five Rings. It's trash.
It's a really good program. Bye.
It does sound like trash. Anyway,
Wait, that sounds closed-minded, Morgan.
Yeah, Morgan, whoa, what the heck? FFG's trying to put out a compelling story and do cool things for various players. We don't all experience gaming the same way.
Listen.
I want you to understand, we just curb your enthusiasm, Morgan, so hard. Like, his face just went to the saddest place.
His who's spelled HISSHOU gaming.
All right, now you have to end it.
all right. Well,
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the church.
well, that went properly off the rails towards the end of it. But thank you, everyone, for listening. If you want to reach out to us, you have multiple avenues to do so. You can add us at Twitter. We are Your Endstep. And when you add us, it's at Your Endstep. We have an email address at yourenstep@gmail.com or Facebook.
I didn't say that.
Facebook.com/@yourenstep. If you're listening to us on your podcast feeder of whatever choice, please leave us a rating or review if you can. It helps visibility and gets new listeners to the show. If you're listening to us via Legit MTG, thank you so much for picking up the show. And thank you for Legit MTG for posting it every week. And check out some of the other articles or their shop they have on there. Again, check out our Patreon, patreon.com/@yourenstep. I'm sure that this probably could have been definitely a feature on that. So we'll have to think about things that we can do for that next time. But please check it out. And thank you again to all of our patrons. But yeah, that's going to be everything for us this week. And you have a great time. Great time.
We broke him, guys.
And we'll catch you next week. Have a great time. Bye.